In today's video, I'm going to be picking up where I left off on my woodshed build, and that means several different things. I will be finishing up the bracing of the woodshed from the main posts to the beams. A few other odds and ends here and there to wrap things up, but the main thing that I accomplished was splitting all of the cedar shakes. It turns out Al and I gathered enough bolts from that cedar tree that was down on his property, and as you can see from this footage right here, I got enough to do the entire roof, or so I think. I still haven't put them up on the roof yet, but as I have it all laid out here in front of me, it looks like I'll have enough. So I'm going to be showing you how I did all that, and I'm going to be adding some extra commentary throughout because I got a little bit out of chronological order. Over the past several weeks since I've been building this thing, I've just recorded videos step by step in order of how they happened. But last week I jumped ahead a little bit, sharing that footage of Al and I gathering the cedar bolts, and you guys didn't see what I did before I went out there. So let's start the video with some footage from before I went to Al's house. And if you guys remember a few weeks ago when I was putting the purlins on, and at the same time I was working on the bracing and I was having a difficult time, I made a pretty ugly cut with the chainsaw, but I did get those two braces up, and then I continued to work on the braces, which you guys haven't seen yet. So let's jump right into me doing that. So after I finished those 6 braces, I ran out of logs. So that meant I had to go back out into the woods off the side of the road with my truck and do a classic log haul like I've done many different times on this project. So once I got the logs from the ditch off the side of the road, brought them back to the cabin and processed them into the braces.
Pictures falling down.
is a lot of braces. Now, let's install them.
Not be allowed to interact with their candidate during that time.
And after I got all the braces put up all the way around the woodshed, it was finally time to remove those 2x4 braces that I had attached to some trees, attached to the ground to keep the woodshed secure until I got it all held together strong by those braces. And at the end of the video, I'll show you guys how strong it is. But the next step in the process, moving again chronologically, was to start taking a look at those cedar bolts that I got from Al that were really old. They had some rot around the exterior of them, so I removed all the tarps that were protecting my firewood and those bolts from the rain that I had gotten for a few days. And I started splitting into these bolts, and as I explained to Al in the truck in last week's video, some of them were good, but unfortunately there was a lot of them that had rot down to the middle. But I just started to go through them, just a few of them, and as you can see, there was this pile right here was not in existence when I started. So this was the beginning stages of that pile. And again, this was before Al and I went to get the final load of cedar bolts, and I just spent some time hacking away at what I had to work with, getting my technique down a little bit. And what I realized, especially after the first time I worked with the tools, Al's fro, my splitting maul thing. For one thing, that splitting maul making contact with the fro is just ear-piercingly loud, but then that maul is really heavy, so my arms got so tired the first time I was splitting. And I had tried to make my own mallet out of some Douglas fir, but it was really soft and the handle broke the first time I tried to use it. I actually made 2 of those, and so this was the second one. And then Al gave me this one. I'm not sure what kind of wood it is. It works well, but it's just so wide and it's not very heavy. But then I found this oak, I believe it is, and so here's some footage of me creating the first iteration of my oak mallet. So after I did a test run with the oak mallet, I was pretty happy with it. It did a good job. Still not as strong as the splitting maul as far as making that first strike and really stabbing into the bolt. That's what that splitting maul works really well for. These wooden ones, they just don't have the power to bust through initially. But once you get through, then the oak one works really well. But I believe it was that same day, looks like I'm wearing the same clothes, the same shirt. That's when I went to town, and that was the conclusion of the video that was last week. I was sitting in the truck doing my little monologue, and immediately after recording that monologue, I went to Al's house. I'm gonna go back to Al's. I'm gonna reload my truck with the bolts that I didn't get. Al just messaged me and let me know that he used his chainsaw to cut up the log that we pulled down the hill with us. He's not there right now, but I'm gonna go to his house and see if I can split and stack those in my truck. There's another load. Success. So I brought that final load of cedar bolts back to the cabin here, and that began a 3-day splitting extravaganza where I did nothing but eat, sleep, and split cedar shakes. That's all I did for 3 consecutive days. And let me tell you, I was in the pain cave. I don't know if any of you have ever run a marathon, but it was like participating in a marathon. And after mile 1, I was like, this is really painful and this is going to be horrible. I have no idea how I'm going to get to the end of this. And this was a terrible idea to make these shakes, and just all these negative thoughts going through my head. But I was just like, you know what? I'm doing this no matter what. And so I just put my head down and I split and I split and I split, and just one after another. And it took 3 days, like literally 3 days. That's all I did was split all these shakes. Sorry, Al, I call them shingles again. I turned all those bolts into all these shakes that you see here. And I could share, I recorded a lot, but it's so monotonous and repetitive that it's like, okay, how much of this footage do you really need to see? It's just the same thing over and over for like days, literally. So I tried to get some footage of like, okay, I was this many bolts through and then this many bolts through and then this many, but then I just got tired after a while. So I don't think I recorded for like an entire day. I was just like, I'm not even turning on the camera. I got to go to work here. I ended up going through 2 of these. This was the first one. I made this one really pretty. It took a lot of time to make this one. And then the second one is this one right here. A lot less pretty. I just used the chainsaw and saved myself some time. But it worked almost as well. You can see like how little there is left of it. I still have some more to split, actually. I'm not completely done with the shakes. As you can see right here, this is going to go on the ridge cap, and I'm only halfway done with that, but I have plenty of short ones left, and those should be easy because the shorter they are, the easier they are to split through. So that shouldn't be too bad. So after cleaning everything up, that's the footage that you're seeing right now, me kind of moving things out of the way, reorganizing, cleaning up the area around here because it was going to rain, which it did. It's kind of wet out here right now. But I spent yesterday while it was raining in town buying some odds and ends and things that I'm going to need to finish this project, including some dowel material. And I did a few dowel installations. That's to cover up all the screws, the timber screws that I used throughout. So I think that's going to look pretty cool, having all those dowels throughout the woodshed. That'll be kind of a cool aesthetic look. I could have went out to the woods again and found branches that were the right size and like whittled them down. But I thought about that. I'm like, that's going to take forever. And that Forstner bit that I used, I think that's what they're called. It's exactly 1 inch. So I'll just get some 1-inch dowel and make it really easy on myself.
I feel like it's the little things that keep you happy now. You gotta cherish the little things. I got a Snapple today. The other day I said polar bears used to be brown with revolution.
And that is chronological order. That's how I got to where I am right now. Holy cow. A lot of work. I'm feeling pretty sore, pretty tired, and I was going to try and do this whole ridge cap thing, but you know what I think I'm going to do instead is save that for the next video, which is going to be me building this woodshed from start to finish, because installing all these shakes is going to be kind of straightforward. It's going to be like hammer, nail, hammer, nail, hammer, nail. So that's going to be like a 2-minute segment of video. So it's not really worthy of an entire video. So next week, you guys are going to see me do this ridge cap, install all the shakes, and you'll get to see me build the whole thing from start to finish. But before I wrap this video up, there were a few things that I wanted to cover that I noticed during the editing process. I wanted to further explain the notching technique that I used for those braces. It's really difficult because it wasn't just like, okay, trim at a 45-degree angle, trim at a 45-degree angle, and then set it up there and screw it in. I didn't want to do that like I did at the top on the ridge beam, because up there, not super critical for it to be like very, very strong. I was confident that the 6-inch screws that I used were going to be plenty strong enough up there, but down below, I'm just imagining, like, imagine if I was a humongous giant, like I'm Hagrid, grabbing the bottom post and then the beam over there on the woodshed. And I grab them and I squeeze them together like this in an attempt to break my woodshed and break the braces that hold those two things together. Now, if I were to just do what I did up at the ridge beam, if I was strong enough to do that, I would just snap the screws that hold that brace together, because that's what's holding that brace up there is the strength of those timber screws. It would just snap the screws. But if I use the technique that I use down below, where I not only cut 45 here, 45 here, but I make this extra little 1.5-inch notch on each one of those, and then it sets into the post, and then it sets into the beam. Well, then, if Hagrid tries and pulls those together, he's going to be working against not only the screws that hold it in, but the notch itself. It's like pushing down on the post and pushing up on the beam, and he's literally going to have to snap the beam itself, like it's going to have to snap that in half, and that's going to be very difficult for him because those are 5 to 6 inch diameter Douglas fir logs that are there. So those things are extremely strong. One thing I forgot to mention in my little sit down monologue over there was the way this worked out with the deck boards on the top here. Remember when I was building this attic floor up here, I used these old deck boards and I cut them at a 45-degree angle on both sides so that it would sit flat against the bottom of this beam here. And that ended up working out pretty well for these braces because I was able to cut them at a flat 45 and they kind of push against those deck boards and then against the beam. So that's why these braces right here have the little inset notch on the top and the bottom, whereas these ones on the side, they have the inset notch here, but then they're flat at the top. And I'm gonna show you me shaking the woodshed now that it's all secured. It does not get very windy here in this area of the woods. But even if it was windy, the big bad wolf could huff and puff and he ain't blowing that over. And the shakes aren't even on the roof yet. So you add all that weight onto the woodshed, it's already super heavy, and then you add all the weight of the shakes, that thing ain't moving. So I'm fine with how I did the foundation and how it's just, technically it's floating there, but there's this thing called gravity that pulls weight down. So I think it's fine. Oh man, I could go more into depth about my ideas about splitting shakes. One thing I will say is I've gotten several people ask me like, dude, why did you make them so thick? Like shingles or shakes do not have to be that thick. In fact, when I was at Home Depot, I got some footage on my phone to show you guys, like, this is how shingles, cedar shingles that are made from a sawmill, that's how thin they are. So if I were to just go and buy them, that's how thin they usually are. So when people see what I'm doing here, they're like, holy crap, that's so overkill. And these aren't shakes technically. I'm making boards because it's 1 inch thick all the way through. But in my mind, I was like, you know what? I want this thing to last a long time. Obviously, it's not going to last forever, but I would like to not have to think about this roof for a very, very long time. Think about replacing it for a long time. And even when it comes time to replace it, I'll probably just put metal right on top of the shingles or shakes. So that's why I didn't taper my shakes, because I just wanted, I was like, you know what? I want a thick freaking shake on this. I want it to last a very, very long time. And yes, that made it way more difficult to split if I would have made them thinner. But I went through that whole thought process at the very beginning when I got the first bolt back here to the cabin and I was splitting. I was deciding at that moment, like, okay, how thick am I going to make these? And I did try and split some thin ones, but these bolts aren't perfect. And when you split them thin, they are going to taper, and then you're left with like, it goes down to nothing, which again, that's like how these are usually made. I understand that. But to me, I was just like, I want thickness. I don't want any water penetrating through this. So even if it does rot, it's going to have to rot so much. Like it's going to take a long time for this roof to fail. All right, everybody. Well, that's way more explaining than I planned on doing. So I better stop, and I will see you guys next week when you get to see the shakes on the roof. But I don't want to reveal that until it's like, boom, you get to see the build from start to finish. And it's like, he's got the shingles on and it's all done. And then after that, I got to fill it with firewood. So that's going to be exciting too. I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, those are like my most popular videos, me getting firewood. I could do all this like really like technical stuff that takes a lot of skill and craftsmanship, and people don't care about that as much as me just like throwing logs into the back of the truck and flipping logs and splitting them into firewood. So that's how that works. But look forward to all of that and really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.